New York City. A lavish office in Midtown. Ethan Caldwell leaned back in his leather chair, admiring the view from his 40th floor office. The city stretched endlessly below, cars honking, people rushing. Rats in a race, just like he used to be. But not anymore. He had cracked the code to success. Deception. A sleek, suited man sat across from him, nervously twiddling a gold pen between his fingers. He was Ryan Porter, Ethan's right-hand man, and the only person who knew the truth. "Ethan, I gotta ask again, are you sure about this?" Ryan said, lowering his voice. "We're talking about millions of dollars in donations. This could go south fast." Ethan chuckled, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "Ryan, buddy, that's the beauty of it. People love throwing money at charity, especially if they think they're helping starving kids." Ryan sighed, rubbing his temple. "But there are no starving kids, Ethan. There's no actual charity." Ethan smirked. "Exactly. And that's why we're going to be filthy rich." The perfect lie. Ethan had built a fake nonprofit, Hope for Tomorrow Foundation. It had a flashy website filled with stock photos of smiling children and heartwarming testimonials, completely fabricated. Wealthy donors and corporations were already lining up, eager to be seen as generous philanthropists. "You don't feel even a little guilty?" Ryan asked, shaking his head. Ethan laughed. "Guilty? For what? Do you think billionaires actually care about charity? They donate to get tax breaks, Ryan. We're just cutting out the middleman." Ryan exhaled slowly. "And when people ask where their money is going," Ethan grinned. "That's the beauty of it. We'll build schools in Africa. We'll send medical aid to disaster zones. All on paper, of course. We funnel the money through offshore accounts, and no one will ever trace it back to us." Ryan looked unconvinced, but he had been writing Ethan's schemes for years. He wasn't innocent, just cautious. The pitch. That afternoon, Ethan prepared for his biggest pitch yet. A private gala hosted by billionaire investor Jonathan Mercer. If Mercer donated, others would follow. Inside the ballroom of the luxurious Celeste Hotel, chandeliers dripped with crystal, and champagne flowed freely. Ethan and Ryan worked the crowd, charming New York's elite. Ethan approached Mercer, an imposing man with silver hair and piercing blue eyes. "Mr. Mercer, it's an honor," Ethan said, extending his hand. Mercer shook it firmly. "I've heard about your foundation. Tell me, what makes it different?" Ethan put on his best solemn face. "Transparency, Mr. Mercer. Other charities waste money on overhead. At Hope for Tomorrow, 95% of donations go directly to feeding children and building schools in impoverished regions." Mercer raised an eyebrow. "That's an impressive claim." Ethan nodded earnestly. "I have personal teams overseeing every dollar. We're changing lives, Mr. Mercer." Mercer studied him for a moment. Then he smiled. "That's good to hear. I'll have my assistant draft a donation of $2 million. Ryan nearly choked on his champagne. Ethan remained calm, smiling. "Your generosity will change lives," Ethan said smoothly. As Mercer walked away, Ryan grabbed Ethan's arm. $2 million? Are you crazy? That's too much. The IRS is gonna sniff around." Ethan took a sip of champagne, smirking. "By the time they do, Ryan will be in the Bahamas." But fate had other plans. A celebration of deception. After securing Jonathan Mercer's $2 million pledge, Ethan Caldwell felt invincible. The gala had been a massive success. More donations had poured in, and the Hope for Tomorrow Foundation was now the talk of New York's elite. "This is it, Ryan," Ethan said, swirling a glass of aged whiskey back at his penthouse. "We've made it. By this time next month, we'll have funneled enough into offshore accounts to retire." Ryan sat across from him, still fidgeting. "It's too fast, Ethan. We should have started smaller, 50,000 here, 100 there. But 2 million? That kind of money makes people ask questions." Ethan scoffed. "Who's asking? The donors feel good about themselves, the media eats up the story, and the IRS? They're too busy chasing real criminals." Ryan wasn't convinced, but he'd been following Ethan for years. He wasn't about to jump ship now. Just make sure everything looks clean on paper, Ethan continued. Fake school blueprints, fake receipts for aid shipments, whatever we need to keep people from looking too closely. The first doubt. The next morning, Ethan strutted into his foundation's headquarters, a sleek, rented office space in Manhattan. His assistant, Megan Carter, greeted him with a concerned expression. "Sir, we got a call from a reporter at the New York Post." Ethan's confidence wavered for the first time. "What kind of call?" Megan handed him a note. "A woman named Olivia Hayes. She says she wants to do an in-depth feature on the charity. She's asking for financial records and wants to visit one of the schools we've built in Uganda." Ethan forced a laugh. "Oh, that's wonderful. Great publicity." Megan frowned. "Should I schedule a meeting?" No, Ethan said quickly. "Let's not waste her time. Just send her some press materials, photos, mission statements, that sort of thing. Tell her we're too busy to give her a tour right now." Megan hesitated. She was pretty insistent. Ethan's smile stiffened. "Megan, trust me. Just handle it." She nodded and left, but Ethan could feel the first drop of sweat forming on his back. A digging journalist. Across the city, in a cluttered newsroom, Olivia Hayes sat at her desk, frowning at her phone. She had been chasing corruption stories for years, and something about hope for tomorrow felt off. She clicked through their website. Everything was perfectly curated to perfect. Testimonials with no real names. Success stories without details. And most suspiciously, no public records of aid shipments, land purchases, or school construction. "Hey, Max," she called over to her research assistant. "Pull up tax filings for Hope for Tomorrow. See if their financials match up with their reported donations." Max nodded, already typing. Olivia stared at the screen. Let's see how much hope they're really giving. A call he couldn't ignore. Ethan's phone buzzed, just as he was preparing to leave the office. Unknown number. He usually ignored those, but something told him to pick up. "Hello, Mr. Caldwell. This is Olivia Hayes from the New York Post. I was hoping to speak with you about your foundation." Ethan leaned back, gripping his desk. Olivia. I just heard from my assistant. I appreciate your interest, but I'm afraid we're extremely busy. I can send over some materials." "Actually," Olivia said, her voice sharp, "I'd prefer to meet in person. I have some specific questions about your organization's financial transparency." Ethan chuckled lightly. "Transparency is our top priority, Olivia. I assure you, everything is perfectly accounted for." There was a pause. "That's funny, because your tax filings tell a different story." Ethan's blood went cold. "Excuse me? Your charity reported receiving over $10 million in donations last year, but your expense reports only account for about $2 million. Where did the rest go?" Ethan kept his voice calm. "Ms. Hayes, you're misunderstanding how international charity work operates." "Then prove it," Olivia interrupted. "Give me an itemized breakdown of expenses. Show me actual photos of schools and aid deliveries. If everything's above board, this will be great publicity for you." Ethan clenched his jaw. "She's smarter than I thought. I'll have my team send you what we can," he said smoothly. "Give us a few days. I'll expect something by Friday." Click. Ethan slammed his phone onto the desk. Ryan walked in just as Ethan cursed under his breath. "What now?" Ethan exhaled sharply. "We've got a problem. A reporter's digging." Ryan's face paled. "What do we do?" Ethan's mind raced. "We stall. Fake some documents. Find a few photos that look real. And if she keeps pushing, we make sure she stops asking questions." Ryan hesitated. "What do you mean by that?" Ethan's eyes were cold. "I mean, we bury the story. However we have to." But what Ethan didn't know was that fate had already set its trap. A penthouse celebration. Ethan Caldwell's penthouse was the epitome of excess. Marble floors, a glass wall overlooking the city, and a bar stocked with liquor that cost more than most people's rent. He tossed his tuxedo jacket onto the couch and poured himself a drink. Ryan, on the other hand, was pacing. Ethan, I can't shake this feeling. 2 million is a big number. Mercer's people will want receipts. Ethan sighed, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Ryan, you worry too much. We've done this a dozen times. Not at this scale. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. Look, Mercer's assistant is gonna do due diligence. They'll ask for reports, photos, maybe even visits to these schools we're supposedly building. Ethan smirked. And we'll give them everything they need. Pictures, reports. Hell, I'll even send them videos of kids in Africa saying, "Thank you, Mr. Mercer." Ryan's face darkened. And where exactly are we getting those? Ethan downed his drink and grabbed his phone. Ever heard of stock footage? AI-generated images? Come on, Ryan. This is child's play. Ryan exhaled, shaking his head. I don't know, man. Maybe we should? Ethan's phone buzzed. A new email. The Journalist. From Emily Carter. Subject: Inquiry about Hope for Tomorrow Foundation. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Who the hell is Emily Carter? Ryan peeked over his shoulder. Carter? She's an investigative journalist. Works for the New York Chronicle. Ethan's smirk faded. He opened the email. Mr. Caldwell, I'm working on a feature about high-impact charities and came across Hope for Tomorrow. I'd love to set up an interview to discuss your organization's work, financial breakdown, and success stories. Additionally, I've noticed there are no registered field offices under your foundation's name. Could you clarify where your operational headquarters are located? Looking forward to your response. Best. Emily Carter, investigative journalist, The New York Chronicle. Ethan tossed his phone onto the couch. Great. A nosy reporter. Ryan frowned. This is bad, Ethan. She already suspects something. Ethan exhaled, his mind already working. We handle it like we always do, with charm. I'll give her just enough information to make her back off. Ryan still looked uneasy. And if she doesn't? Ethan grinned. Then we make her look like an idiot. The setup. The next day, Ethan arranged a meeting with Emily at a trendy cafe in Brooklyn. He arrived in a tailored navy blue suit, exuding the aura of a busy philanthropist. Emily, on the other hand, was dressed in a simple blazer and jeans, her auburn hair pulled into a loose ponytail. She wasted no time. Mr. Caldwell, thanks for meeting me. Ethan flashed a charismatic smile. Of course. Always happy to talk about our mission. Emily pulled out her recorder. I'll get right to it. Your website claims Hope for Tomorrow has built 42 schools in underdeveloped countries. But I can't find any verified partnerships with contractors or NGOs. Can you provide those details? Ethan chuckled. I see what's happening here. You're trying to find the gotcha moment. He leaned in. Let me save you some time. We don't always work with big-name NGOs. That's how we keep our costs low. Most of our projects are managed through private contractors. Emily didn't flinch. Then surely you can provide the names of these contractors? Ethan took a slow sip of his espresso. I can, but I'd rather not subject them to media scrutiny. You know how it is. One bad headline, and donors get scared. Emily raised an eyebrow. That's a convenient excuse. Ethan smirked. It's the truth. She tapped her pen on the table. All right. Then, let's talk finances. Your foundation raised over $20 million last year. Public records show less than 10% went to documented projects. Where's the rest? Ethan's smile faltered for half a second, but that was enough. Emily caught it. That's interesting. You hesitated. Ethan forced a chuckle. Ms. Carter, do you know how many charities actually spend 100% of their funds on their mission? None. There are operational costs, salaries, logistics. Emily leaned forward. Sure. But even factoring that in, your numbers don't add up. Ethan's jaw tightened. You're making a lot of assumptions, Ms. Carter. Emily smiled. And you're avoiding my questions, Mr. Caldwell. A dangerous turn. As the meeting ended, Ethan forced a friendly handshake. "It was lovely chatting, Ms. Carter," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I hope your article does us justice." Emily shook his hand, but didn't smile. "Oh, don't worry. It will." As she walked away, Ryan, who had been sitting nearby, rushed over. "Dude, she's not buying it." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Then we make sure she doesn't publish." Ryan paled. "What the hell does that mean?" Ethan's eyes darkened. "It means we shut her down by any means necessary." But fate had already decided otherwise. Ethan's penthouse, midnight. Ethan Caldwell sat in his dimly lit penthouse, staring at the city skyline. His whiskey glass was nearly empty, his mind racing. Across from him, Ryan paced back and forth, his anxiety almost palpable. "Ethan, listen to me. This is not the kind of problem we solve by shutting someone down. Emily Carter is a journalist, not some intern we can intimidate." Ethan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temple. "I know that, Ryan, but she's a problem. A big one. And problems need solutions." Ryan folded his arms. "We could just disappear, cash out and go offshore." Ethan scoffed. "And leave all this behind? No way. I've spent years building this empire. I'm not running because of one reporter." Ryan hesitated. "Then what's the plan?" Ethan's eyes darkened. "We make her lose credibility. If she's exposed as a fraud or a liar, no one will believe her article." Ryan frowned. "How the hell do we do that?" Ethan smirked. "By creating a scandal of our own." The setup. The next morning, Ethan called Trevor Marks, a sleazy PR consultant who specialized in reputation management, a fancy term for destroying people's lives. Trevor arrived at Ethan's penthouse an hour later, dressed in an overpriced suit and reeking of expensive cologne. "Ethan, my man, you're in a tight spot. But don't worry. I thrive in tight spots." Ethan leaned forward. "I need dirt on Emily Carter. Something big." Trevor grinned. "Already on it. I ran a deep dive. Credit reports, past employers, personal relationships. The girl is clean. Too clean." Ethan frowned. "That's not helpful, Trevor." Trevor chuckled. "Relax. If there's no dirt, we make some." Ryan's face turned pale. "Wait, are you talking about fabricating evidence?" Trevor gave him a smug look. "What, you think politicians and CEOs survive on honesty? We create a scandal. Fake bank records, leaked emails, a former source claiming she falsified stories." Ethan smirked. "Now we're talking. Do it." Ryan clenched his fists. "Ethan, this is too far." Ethan stood, glaring at him. "Too far? Ryan, do you want to spend the rest of your life in federal prison?" Ryan exhaled sharply, but said nothing. He knew he was in too deep. Emily gets a warning. That afternoon, Emily sat in her cluttered office at the New York Chronicle, typing up her expose on Hope for Tomorrow. The deeper she dug, the worse it got. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" A deep voice spoke. "Ms. Carter." "Drop the story." Emily's heart skipped. "Who is this?" "A friend. If you know what's good for you, you'll walk away." Emily's grip tightened on the phone. "You're threatening a journalist. That's a crime." The voice chuckled. "And publishing false information is a career killer. Think about it." The line went dead. Emily stared at the phone, her heartbeat racing. This wasn't just about fraud anymore. Someone was scared. And that meant she was on to something big. She took a deep breath, then picked up her phone and dialed. "Hey, Jake? Yeah? I need you to dig deeper on Ethan Caldwell. I think I just got my first real threat." The backfire. That night, Ethan poured himself another drink, confident that Emily was getting the message. But then his phone buzzed. A news alert. Loudspeaker breaking news. Investigative journalist Emily Carter receives threats after exposing charity fraud. Ethan's blood ran cold. He opened the article. Emily had published a teaser about her investigation, without revealing too much, but included a detail that made his stomach drop. "Earlier today, I received an anonymous threat warning me to drop this story. This only confirms that there is something to hide. I will not be intimidated. The comments were already flooding in. Speech balloon, if she's being threatened, this charity must be a scam. Speech balloon Ethan Caldwell is a crook. FBI needs to look into him. Speech balloon, we need to protect our journalists. Expose them all. Ryan stormed into the room. Ethan, tell me you're seeing this. Ethan's grip tightened around his glass. This wasn't supposed to happen. Ryan shook his head. You just made her a hero, Ethan. Now everyone's watching. Ethan slammed his glass down, shattering it. Then we bury her before she buries us. But fate wasn't on his side, because the person who would ultimately save him was someone he least expected. Ethan Caldwell's office. The next morning, Ethan stormed into his office, slamming the door behind him. His jaw clenched as he tossed his phone onto the desk. Emily Carter's article had gone viral overnight. Ryan was already there, nervously scrolling through the backlash online. Ethan, we've got a serious problem. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, trying to steady himself. No kidding, Ryan. The internet thinks I'm the second coming of Bernie Madoff. Ryan threw his phone onto the desk. This isn't just bad PR anymore. People are asking questions. Mercer's people want a full audit of our financials. Ethan's face paled slightly. They what? Ryan nodded grimly. Mercer's lawyers called this morning. They want detailed reports of where his donation went. If we can't provide it, he'll press charges for fraud. Ethan paced. Okay, we can fix this. We fake reports, fabricate expenses. Ryan cut him off. Ethan, it's over. The moment Mercer starts digging, the feds won't be far behind. Ethan slammed his fist against the desk. Then we stay ahead of them. We move the money, shut down hope for tomorrow, and disappear before anyone can touch us. Ryan's voice was eerily calm. And then what? Hide in some country with no extradition? You think that'll last forever? Ethan narrowed his eyes. If we act fast enough, we won't have to run forever. Ryan hesitated before pulling out his phone. You don't get it, Ethan. We don't have time. He turned the screen toward him. Ethan's heart dropped. Loudspeaker breaking. The FBI opens investigation into Hope for Tomorrow Foundation. The article was short but devastating. Emily's teaser had caught the attention of federal investigators, and now they were officially looking into Ethan's finances. Shit, Ethan muttered. Ryan swallowed hard. They'll freeze the account soon. We have hours, maybe minutes, before they cut off our escape. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. He had to act now. The desperate move. Ethan called Trevor Marks, the shady PR consultant. Trevor, I need an exit strategy. Now. Trevor chuckled on the other end. You're in deep, huh? No time for jokes. The FBI is involved. Trevor sighed. All right, I know a guy who moves money offshore, but it's not cheap. You'll need to pull every cent you can right now. Ethan nodded. Done. Set it up. He hung up and turned to Ryan. We pull everything. Liquidate accounts, move the money offshore, and disappear. Ryan didn't move. His face was grim. Ethan, I can't do this. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? Ryan took a shaky breath. I should have walked away a long time ago. I ignored the red flags, because you always found a way out. But this time, there's no way out. Ethan's voice dropped to a cold whisper. You're backing out? Ryan nodded. I am. Ethan stared at him for a long moment. Then he smirked. That's fine, Ryan. He walked over, clapping a hand on his shoulder. But if I go down, you go down too. Ryan stiffened. What the hell does that mean? Ethan stepped back. I'll make sure they think this was your idea. That you handled all the money. That you were the mastermind. He shrugged. You want to play the moral guy now? Fine. But you won't be playing it from the outside. Ryan's face drained of color. You're insane. Ethan grinned. And you're trapped. But what Ethan didn't know was that Ryan had already made his choice. The betrayal. That evening, Ryan walked into a nondescript coffee shop in Brooklyn. Across the table sat Emily Carter. She looked up, surprised. "Ryan Porter. Didn't think I'd hear from you." Ryan exhaled deeply. "I'm done protecting him." Emily leaned forward. "So you're ready to talk?" Ryan nodded. "You want proof?" "I have it. Bank records, offshore transactions, fake invoices. I'll give you everything." Emily's eyes widened. "Why the change of heart?" Ryan's voice was bitter. "Because Ethan's throwing me under the bus. I won't let him take me down with him." Emily studied him for a moment, then slid a small recorder onto the table. "Tell me everything." And just like that, Ethan Caldwell's fate was sealed. Ethan's penthouse, 7 a.m. Ethan Caldwell woke to the sound of his phone vibrating violently against the nightstand. His head pounded from last night's whiskey, but something in his gut told him this wasn't just a hangover. He groggily reached for the phone and squinted at the screen. 17 missed calls. Most were from Trevor Marks, but the last one caught his attention: Jonathan Mercer. Mercer never called. Ethan sat up, his heartbeat spiking as he swiped to answer. "Mr. Mercer, what a surprise." "Cut the bullshit, Caldwell." Mercer's voice was cold. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Ethan's blood ran cold. "Find out what exactly?" "That you scammed me out of $2 million. Mercer's voice was steady, but there was an underlying fury that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. "You think I'm some clueless old man? I've been doing business longer than you've been alive. And let me tell you something, kid. I've seen people like you before." Ethan forced himself to breathe. "Jonathan, listen." "No, you listen." Mercer's voice dropped into a growl. "You have exactly 24 hours to return every cent of my money, or I'll do worse than the FBI ever could." Ethan swallowed hard. "You don't want to do that." Mercer chuckled. "Are you threatening me, Caldwell?" Ethan hesitated. Mercer wasn't a man to mess with. "I'll fix this," Ethan said finally. "Just give me time." 24 hours. That's all the time you get. The line went dead. Ethan sat there, gripping his phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. The noose was tightening. Then another call came in. Trevor. He answered immediately. "Tell me you have good news." Trevor's voice was anything but reassuring. "Ethan, we have a big problem. The leak." 30 minutes later, Ethan sat in his office, staring at his laptop screen. Trevor had sent him a link. Exclusive. Former insider exposes hope for tomorrow as multi-million-dollar fraud. FBI investigation underway. Emily Carter's article. And the source? Ryan Porter. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. That son of a... Trevor was still on the line. "Ethan, listen to me. The feds are moving fast." Ryan gave them everything: bank records, offshore transfers, forged donation receipts. "It's all out there now." Ethan's mind raced. "How much time do we have?" Trevor hesitated. "Hours. Maybe less." Ethan slammed his laptop shut. "I'm getting the hell out of here." "Where?" Trevor asked. "Your accounts are frozen. Your assets are flagged. You can't just hop on a plane." Ethan gritted his teeth. "Then I find another way." The getaway plan. Ethan grabbed a duffel bag and started stuffing it with whatever cash he had in his penthouse safe. $80,000. Not enough, but better than nothing. Then he opened a drawer, pulling out a fake passport, one of many he had stashed over the years. Ryan had betrayed him. Mercer wanted his money back. The FBI was closing in. But Ethan Caldwell wasn't going down without a fight. His phone buzzed again. A text from Trevor. "T. Meet me at the docks. Pier 17. I have a guy who can get you out." Ethan grabbed his bag and rushed out the door. But fate had other plans. The roadblock. As Ethan pulled out of the underground parking garage in his sleek black BMW, he noticed something unsettling. A black SUV was parked across the street. Another one was at the end of the block. Unmarked cars. Feds. Ethan exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. He made a right turn, acting natural. The SUVs didn't move. Good. Then he checked his rearview mirror. A third SUV was following him. His hands gripped the steering wheel. Shit. Ethan made another turn, weaving through the morning traffic. The SUV stayed with him. Then, flashing lights filled his mirror. FBI. No, no, no. Ethan's foot slammed the gas. The BMW roared forward, weaving between cars. Horns blared as he ran a red light, dodging oncoming traffic. The sirens got louder. More flashing lights appeared behind him. He took another sharp turn, too sharp. The back wheel skidded, and the car slammed into a parked vehicle. The impact dazed him for a second, but before he could react, bang, bang, bang. His driver's side window shattered as an FBI agent slammed his baton against it. Ethan Caldwell, get out of the vehicle. Hands where we can see them. Ethan's breath came in sharp gasps. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. He was supposed to win. Strong hands yanked the car door open. He felt the cold metal of handcuffs snap around his wrists. As they pulled him out and slammed him against the hood, he caught sight of someone standing on the sidewalk. Ryan, his former right-hand man, watching, not saying a word, just watching as Ethan's empire crumbled. And for the first time in his life, Ethan Caldwell knew what it felt like to lose. FBI headquarters, New York City. Ethan Caldwell sat in a cold, windowless interrogation room, his wrists cuffed to the metal table. His suit, once a symbol of power, was now wrinkled and stained with sweat. His hair was disheveled, and for the first time in his life, he felt small. The door opened with a metallic creak, and in walked Special Agent Mark Davidson, mid-40s, buzzcut, with a no-nonsense expression. He tossed a thick folder onto the table and took a seat across from Ethan. Ethan Caldwell, Davidson said, flipping open the folder. Founder of Hope for Tomorrow, philanthropist, businessman. He looked up with a smirk. And, as of today, an indicted fraudster. Ethan leaned back in his chair, forcing a smirk. You got the wrong guy, Agent. Davidson chuckled. That's funny, because your ex-partner gave us everything. Bank records, offshore transfers, even your little fake invoices. He leaned in. We've been watching you for months, Caldwell. And now you're done. Ethan's jaw clenched. Ryan, that traitor. Davidson slid a paper across the table. You're looking at wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. That's 25 years minimum. Ethan's stomach twisted, but he kept his expression blank. Davidson sat back, folding his arms. Unless... Ethan narrowed his eyes. Unless what? Davidson tapped the folder. You weren't working alone. Mercer's name came up in our investigation. We know he laundered money through your charity. You give us something on him, we'll cut you a deal. Ethan scoffed. You think Mercer won't have me killed the second I open my mouth? Davidson shrugged. That's not my problem. But prison? That'll be very much your problem. He stood up. You have 24 hours to decide. The door slammed shut, leaving Ethan alone with his thoughts. He had clawed his way to the top, lied, cheated, stolen. And now, he was just another crook in a cage. The visitor. 2 hours later, the door opened again. But this time, it wasn't Davidson. It was Emily Carter, the journalist who had taken him down. Ethan's lip curled. Come to gloat. Emily took a seat across from him, placing her recorder on the table. No. I came to ask you one question. Ethan scoffed. Oh, this'll be good? Emily leaned forward. Why? Ethan frowned. Why what? Emily folded her arms. You were already rich. You had everything. So why scam people? Why fake a charity? Ethan stared at her, then laughed dryly. You think I did this for the money? Emily didn't respond. Ethan shook his head. You don't get it. It was never about the money. It was about power. The thrill. Watching idiots throw money at me, thinking they were doing good. He chuckled. You wouldn't understand. Emily studied him, then sighed. You're right. I don't. She stood up and grabbed her recorder. Enjoy prison, Ethan? As she reached the door, Ethan called out. Wait. She turned. Ethan swallowed hard. Mercer's dirtier than me. You want a real story? Go after him. Emily raised an eyebrow. And why would I trust anything you say? Ethan smirked. Because you know I don't lie when it benefits me. Emily hesitated. Then, she left without a word. The offer. That night, Ethan sat alone in his holding cell, staring at the wall. Then a guard approached. Caldwell. You got another visitor. Ethan frowned. Who the hell? Before he could finish, Jonathan Mercer stepped into view. Ethan's blood ran cold. Mercer smirked. Looks like you're in a bit of a bind, son. Ethan stood slowly. What do you want, Mercer? Mercer chuckled. That's the wrong question. The right question is, what do you need? Ethan clenched his jaw. You setting me up? Mercer shook his head. No, Ethan. I'm offering you a way out. Ethan narrowed his eyes. I'm listening. Mercer's smirk widened. Good. Because I just bought your lawyer, your judge, and half the people in this building. You do one thing for me, and you walk out of here a free man. Ethan exhaled sharply. And what's that? Mercer leaned in, his voice a whisper. Take the fall. For everything? Ethan's heart pounded. What? Mercer's expression darkened. You plead guilty. You say it was all you. No partners, no outside connections. You take the hit, and in return, I make sure you do 3 years, max, in a luxury facility. And when you get out, you're a very rich man. Ethan swallowed. And if I say no? Mercer smiled coldly. Then you get 25 years in hell. And trust me, Ethan, you won't last that long. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. He had one choice to make. FBI holding facility. Interrogation room. Ethan Caldwell sat across from Jonathan Mercer, his mind racing. Let me get this straight, Ethan said, keeping his voice even. You want me to confess to everything, take the full blame, and in return you pull strings to get me out in 3 years? Mercer smiled, folding his hands on the table. That's right. 3 years in a minimum security prison. Private room. No real punishment. And when you walk out, you'll have enough money waiting for you to start over anywhere in the world. Ethan clenched his jaw. He knew a trap when he saw one. And if I refuse? Mercer's smile didn't falter. Then you rot in prison for the rest of your life. And trust me, Ethan, I know people inside. You won't last a month. Ethan exhaled slowly. He was cornered. The counterplay. Mercer tapped the table. You're smart, Ethan. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Ethan sat back, his mind spinning. He needed a way out. A real way out. Fine, he said finally. I'll take the deal. Mercer smirked. Smart man. He slid a document across the table. Sign this confession. My lawyer will handle the rest. Ethan picked up the pen. His fingers tightened around it. And then he made his decision. He stabbed the pen into Mercer's hand. Mercer let out a strangled yell as blood spurted onto the table. FBI agents rushed in, dragging Ethan off Mercer before he could do any more damage. You just signed your own death warrant. Mercer bellowed, clutching his bleeding hand. Ethan laughed, even as agents slammed him against the wall. Go to hell, Mercer. The last gamble. 30 minutes later, Ethan sat bruised and handcuffed in another room. This time, across from Special Agent Davidson and Emily Carter. Davidson shook his head. I don't know whether to call you stupid or reckless. Ethan smirked. I prefer resourceful. Emily crossed her arms. You just made an enemy out of one of the most powerful men in New York. Ethan's smile faded. I know, which is why I'm ready to make a deal. Davidson leaned in. I'm listening. Ethan exhaled. I give you Mercer, his offshore accounts, his shell companies, everything. Davidson's eyes flickered with interest. And what do you want in return? Ethan's jaw clenched. I want protection. Witness relocation. And I want to serve my time somewhere safe. Davidson sat back, considering. You'll still do time? Ethan nodded. Yeah, but I'd rather do 5 years in a safe place than a lifetime watching my back. Davidson glanced at Emily. She gave a small nod. All right, Caldwell, Davidson said finally. You give us Mercer, and we'll cut you a deal. Ethan exhaled, for the first time feeling like he actually had a chance. The takedown. 3 weeks later, the news broke. Loudspeaker breaking. Billionaire Jonathan Mercer arrested in federal sting operation, charged with money laundering and fraud. The footage showed Mercer in handcuffs, his expression twisted with rage as he was led into a federal courthouse. Ethan, watching from his secure holding cell, smirked. He might have lost his empire, but he had won the war. Federal Correctional Facility. 3 years later, Ethan Caldwell sat in the prison yard, staring through the chain-link fence at the gray sky. 3 years. That's how long it had been since his empire crumbled, since he was dragged from his luxury penthouse and thrown into a cell. It could have been worse. Instead of rotting in a maximum security hellhole where Mercer's men would have gutted him in a week, he had served his time in a quiet minimum security prison, thanks to his deal with the feds. The world had moved on without him. And for the first time in his life, Ethan had no power. Caldwell. A guard stood by the gate, arms crossed. Time to go. Ethan took a deep breath and stood up. His sentence was over. But what came next? The outside world. Ethan walked through the gates, the cold wind biting at his skin. He was dressed in second-hand clothes, carrying a small duffel bag. No penthouse. No millions. No one waiting for him. Until he saw her. Emily Carter leaned against a black sedan, arms crossed, watching him. Ethan sighed. Didn't expect to see you here. Emily smirked. Neither did I. But I thought you might need a ride. Ethan hesitated, then walked over and slid into the passenger seat. As she pulled onto the highway, silence stretched between them. Finally, Ethan spoke. So, what now? You got your big story. You destroyed my life. What's left? Emily didn't take her eyes off the road. You tell me, what are you going to do now? Ethan exhaled. I don't know. Emily glanced at him. You could do something different this time. Ethan chuckled. Like what? Become a real philanthropist? Emily shrugged. Why not? You were good at playing the role. Maybe it's time to actually live it. Ethan stared out the window, watching the city skyline in the distance. He had spent his entire life chasing power, wealth, control. And where had it gotten him? Prison. Betrayal. Nothing. Maybe Emily was right. Maybe it was time for something else. Or maybe he would rebuild. Smarter. Better. Stronger. One thing was certain, Ethan Caldwell wasn't done yet.